This is the Inside Deschutes County podcast. Wherever you might be and however you might be listening, thank you for making us a part of your day. You can subscribe on any podcast platform. You can also find us at deschutes.org/podcast.
Deschutes County is an amazing place to live,
Ease of access.
work, and play.
Great place to raise a family.
I love the weather and the high density.
At Deschutes County, we provide excellent service.
Beautiful.
We're here to help you.
Deschutes County is the heart of Oregon.
Everyone wants to be here.
Welcome to the 45th installment of the Inside Deschutes County podcast. I'm Eric Brion. Today we're talking about wildfire mitigation. It's a great time to talk about this because spring and prescribed burning is right around the corner. But we're going to talk about one particular program today. It's called the Sweat Equity Bin Rental Program. And Deschutes County Forester Kevin Moriarty is here to tell us all about it. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You're a return guest.
I am.
And we seem to talk about the same things because it's kind of an important topic, wildfire mitigation.
Yeah, it is, especially with some of the recent events that have happened, for sure.
Yeah, Southern California, for sure. We had fire stuff happen pretty big last year. So pretty important to talk about this stuff, right?
Yeah, we had a pretty big wildfire season in Oregon. And some of the recent fires we've had in like Lahaina and LA have really opened people's awareness to what things are going on.
What needs to be done? Well, let's jump right in. Let's talk about this program. Did I say it right? The Sweat Equity Bin Rental Program.
Yes, that's what we're calling it.
All right, sweat equity. That means hard work, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're getting to.
You put in the sweat and you get a little equity out of it.
Well, let's explain this thing. Can you explain what the program is and why it was created?
Yeah, so this is a sweat equity bin rental program we created out of some grant funding that we received roughly 3 years ago through the Oregon State Fire Marshal. We categorized essentially 3 areas for that funding to occur, and one of those was sweat equity. And when we talk about sweat equity, what we're saying is, communities are out there doing the work, and we're just assisting in that process to get that work done. Usually that has to do with disposing that vegetation.
So that's got to be one of the main goals, right? So what are the main goals of this program in terms of wildfire prevention?
Yeah, so we were looking at a sweat equity program, countywide. There's been some chipping programs that have occurred in the past, and we will continue to do those chipping programs. But it wasn't something we felt we could do on a county scale. We just didn't feel we had the capacity to, run several contracts at once doing chipping operations. And through our fall grant program, we realized that a lot of people are using just bins or dumpsters already in their projects. So each one of these communities is kind of doing their own sweat equity cleanup events, primarily around fire free or in the fall. And so, we we thought about that for a little bit. That everyone was getting bins already, and we're like, well, why don't we just create a separate program that's geared towards getting bins or dumpsters, so they can use that other funding for other things, the actual cleanup itself or getting, equipment or materials, and then we just take care of the disposal. That was something we felt we could take care of because we only have to deal with 2 vendors versus like 30 separate contracts or something like that.
Well, that seems to make sense if they have the bins there already, and cost is a big concern for people. This started as a test program last year, right? So it must have been, was it successful enough last year in your test in order to grow it to the full-time program this year, or what happened there?
Yeah, so we ran it as a pilot program last year. We also have a fall fuel reduction grant that we've been doing for quite some time. We requested inquiries on that. We got a lot of people that said, they're interested in renting bins or dumpsters in their communities. And so that's when we started thinking. We worked with Republic Services at first. They had agreed to, provide discounted rates to renting these bins to the county if we, organize that at a much larger scale. And then we also worked with the city of Bend and their permitting process. They're waiving permit fees to have these dumpsters along the streets. If you are a Firewise community, you still have to get the permit itself, but they're waiving the fees. So those kind of things, it kind of happened organically as far as creating the program. We got inquiries, and then the folks that were interested, we reached out to them and said, hey, would you like to participate? And, overwhelmingly they said yes, and we were able to successfully provide 18 communities last year in rentals for the fire-free event.
Nice. And so just to be clear, this is not for individuals. This is for like communities, like homeowners associations, things like that. Is that kind of how this works?
Yeah, all our grant funding, we really try to focus funding at a community scale. One, we don't have a lot of funding. It really is just not a lot of funding to go around for the entire county. And two, when you think of fire-adapted communities, you have to think about it at a community scale. If you're treating properties at an individual scale, it's not really meeting the objectives of trying to become fire adapted. You really do have to work as a community for it to work. And so that's why we promote our programs at that community scale.
Well, and you'd have thousands of applications. That'd be kind of tough to deal with. So who is eligible then, community-wise, to apply for this program? And what are the key requirements in order for them to be eligible?
The main key requirement is just to be applying on a community or neighborhood scale. That could be as little as 8 landowners, or it could be 650 landowners. We don't try to set that criteria too much. We just want it to be not at an individual level. A lot of HOAs vary as well. Some are pretty small, 20 plus residents, and some are over 600. So, we just try to cater to each one of those groups. The big thing we're looking for is within that community that you're trying to protect is there's a high amount of participation that's going to be involved in the project. That's probably the biggest criteria.
Well, I was going to ask that, Kevin. Is there a selection process? I mean, I know that there are Firewise communities. How does that impact the selection process? What does that process look like for people who are interested?
Yeah, so we'll evaluate them just like we do with our other grants. Some of the factors that we'll look at is fire risk. I would say most of the county is in a high fire risk, so that's not really going to be an issue. But that's something to consider. Are they really close to wildland, open space, or are they kind of in the middle of the city, something like that? Whether they're a Firewise community, that's something we also will consider, but it's not going to be a criteria. I would say probably the biggest criteria is going to be, how many participants in that community, what percentage is going to participate. The higher the participation of those participants, the more we will, more likely they will be funded.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are there things on the flip side of that where people might not be eligible for the program? Like you see that and you're like, no, sorry. Probably not. Like in the middle of the city, or things like that.
Yeah, even in the middle of the city, we'll consider it. It's really we're not going to really trying to fund businesses or corporations or places that have a lot of funding already. We really are looking at like underserved communities. That's going to be a factor as well. A lot of areas that have not seen treatments, with our funding. That's really what we're going to try and go after. And if, we'll get a lot of HOAs and participants that are well-versed in our grant programs, and they'll be eligible as well. But, we're really trying to look at some of the areas that need it the most.
Is this mostly about the fuel around people's homes, or does this also include, I don't know, maybe I'm not educated enough on this, but is it like roofing material? Like, what can they throw away in these bins?
So this will be just for defensible space. And defensible space is just vegetation. So vegetation debris, your trees, your shrubs, your grasses, your pine needles, things like that. We do not want anyone throwing garbage into these dumpsters. It inevitably does happen, but that's for vegetation, not necessarily garbage or house materials.
Because fire mitigation is bigger than just the yard debris.
Yeah.
I just wanted people to be aware this is for getting rid of trees, limbs, brush around your house.
Yeah. You have several pieces. You have home hardening is more what you're speaking to, replacing some of the building materials on your home, like whether that's replacing screens or fence panels or things like that. But no, this is strictly for vegetation.
So this program's been out for a little bit. Are you seeing kind of an increase in kind of community collaboration about this project or discussion about, hey, we should get on board?
Yeah, I think I've seen some traction. We've just seen traction in general. There's been an increase in Firewise communities. We all work together in Central Oregon, all the agencies, and the fire departments and the federal, state, and local agencies work together. So I'd say the interest and the engagement has increased all around, and we're just trying to tap into that. We're trying to provide that opportunity that, hey, if you're already going to have a cleanup event and you're already considering it, we have this service that we can help with that.
Yeah, and we talked about it at the beginning, but I would imagine the awareness because of Los Angeles, Hawaii, the fires we had here, pretty close to some populated areas last year. That's got to have people on alert.
Yeah, I think the LA fires, this winter really put people on high alert. The fires we had last summer, we had multiple evacuations last summer. It is just a matter of time. We're really just trying to prepare for that one that can potentially touch into neighborhoods.
And now is really the time to prepare, right? I mean, because we are on the tail end of winter.
Yeah, now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to plan, not in the middle of summer. Now is the time to plan all the way up to June. And that's lots of things. That's not only the vegetation around your yard, but thinking about the materials on your house, some of the your outbuildings and things like that, how those are treated. Thinking about your window screens and your ventilation and things that help with mitigating the impacts of smoke. It's all related.
Here with Kevin Moriarty, the Deschutes County Forester, talking about the Sweat Equity Bin Rental Program. I'm hoping you can talk us through the logistics too of this. Like, how does Deschutes County coordinate the bins, the payments? How does all that stuff work out?
Yeah, so right now we roughly anticipate funding 30 communities. We have $75,000. That was kind of an equation we built from last year on what we think we can afford. And so once you are awarded that grant, we kind of just take care of the whole money side of things. So whoever that point of contact for that each individual community, they will reach out to one of the two vendors, either Republic Services or Cascade Disposal, and work directly with them on where the placement of the bins are going to be, what the pickup, cycle will be, how often the bins will get picked up and replaced and how long they'll have them. We have some basic criteria. We're not going to pay for any bins past the month of June. And renting bins right now would probably be just too early. So, we're anticipating that the 2 months of May and June to be the primary months that people utilize these bins. And then, so once we've created that list, we'll work with Cascade and Republic Services. We'll generate the list. We'll provide them the list. We have parent accounts with each one of those vendors. And then, so when these particular communities will be billed, it'll just go to the parent account, and the parent account will be invoiced to the Natural Resources Program.
Have you faced any challenges in implementing this program? How have you addressed anything like that in terms of getting this rolling?
Yeah, I mean, there's always little logistics involved. It took a little bit of education on my side and the disposal vendor side just to make sure that things are going to the right accounts, and a lot of these communities will rent bins outside of this program. And that was probably where some of the most confusion was, is we were still getting invoices, still tied to that parent account. So I think we've kind of worked those kinks out a little bit, and it is going to be a little bit on the honor system. If we need to make sure that these bins aren't getting vandalized, or they're not getting misused, they're turned in properly. Those are the things that are really going to, kind of make the program not be successful. As long as people are being responsible with them, they're not putting trash in them, they're being, replaced at a regular interval, then, it should be successful.
I'm sure you'll learn some things as you go, since this is basically the first full year of the program.
Yes, correct.
I know in my neighborhood, Kevin, it's tough to get 3 homeowners or renters on the same page doing something. What advice do you have for people who want to be a part of the program, but it's not necessarily a community scale effort to do something like that? Do you have advice for people as to what they need to do in order to, is it beat down your homeowners association? Is it, knock on doors? Hey, everybody, we can really do this. What kind of suggestions do you have?
Some of the first steps would be, prior to this is, are you a Firewise community? That's probably the biggest way to get community scale engagement as far as doing some of this sweat equity cleanup events. So Firewise communities are naturally fit for this kind of stuff. They've already kind of come up with a plan. They've already figured out, who's going to participate. Getting that greater participation is a difficult task. It's something that we find challenging. We get certain thresholds, but to get like a higher, 60, 70% of the community to participate, that is challenging. All I can say is, getting out there with the bins and people doing work that will create motivation for other people to do the work. If there's a bin available in your neighborhood, and you got 2-3 people working on the weekend to fill it up, people are going to see that, and that kind of spreads a little bit as far as engagement.
We've talked about it briefly, but a Firewise community. For people who don't know what that is, can you explain what that is and what kind of comes along with that?
Yeah, Firewise. It's a Firewise site is the technical term, and it's a NFPA. It's a national program ran by NFPA, and that program is essentially an education program. And to become part of that program, you work with the Oregon Department of Forestry. They will do an initial home assessment process in your community initially, and kind of give you a general overview of what that is, as far as what is needed for defensible space. And then that community itself will create an action plan and put forth a certain amount of volunteer time per year, and then document that. And then those are some of the requirements to become. So you essentially have to go through the Oregon Department of Forestry. You do an initial homeowner assessment, where we have local folks, usually representatives from Oregon Department of Forestry or local fire department folks will participate in that. And then you develop that action plan, you turn in the action plan, and then if everything is good with your plan, then you become an official Firewise site. And then once that happens, you just have to maintain that. And so it doesn't take a lot. You only need 8 landowners to become a Firewise site, but some of our Firewise sites are far more, we have far more residents in our Firewise sites than that.
And you think this is something that might grow, this program, or you just kind of wait and see?
The bin rental program?
Yeah, the bin rental program.
The bin rental program is going to be grant funding dependent, unfortunately. So this is the last year of the large grant that we received from the Oregon State Fire Marshal Office, but we've developed a process, and that's half the battle. So now that we have a process to implement, we just need to look for funding. So, in the next cycle of funding, hopefully there'll be grant funding available, and we can keep that program alive.
And you have other wildfire prevention initiatives that are out there, right? Like Fire Free at the, at the county landfill, those kinds of things.
Yeah, we have the Fire Free event, which has been going on for a long time. That's free disposal at our landfill and our transfer stations. That occurs mostly in the month of May and our transfer stations in the month of June. We've had that for a long time. We're just trying to capitalize on that program. More than just the free disposal of that vegetation, it's really just a community cleanup time a year. And so it just timing wise works out really well because communities are thinking about that. You promote the Fire Free, it seems to encourage them even more because of the media behind that. And then this bin rental program helps even more. So
This seems like the biggest effort from the Natural Resources Department for Deschutes County is wildfire mitigation. Would you agree with that or not?
Yeah, I'd say wildfire mitigation. Project Wildfire. We manage Project Wildfire, and I am the chair of that program. And it is an education and wildfire mitigation program, and it is by far the biggest program in natural resources as far as our department. We do have a small noxious weed program as well that we also put time towards, but fire mitigation is by far our biggest program.
All right, so the call to action. So where can listeners find more information and apply?
So on the Deschutes County Natural Resources website, our grant is available on that website. So there's a little tab on the left-hand side. You can just Google Deschutes County Natural Resources. It should pop up automatically, and you can find that application on that website. The application is a fillable form, and so you just have to fill out the form, and then the application will be sent to us.
And the deadline?
The deadline is February 28th.
And how are recipients notified? Through email or?
Yeah, we will email. Our form's not that fancy. It doesn't send out. It does send out that you have applied, so you will know that you've applied for the application. But we'll notify, as far as awards, probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks after that application.
So middle of
closes.
March, sometime people can expect to be notified.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for walking us through the program. I hope it's very successful, and hopefully this helps get the word out just a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate the time to speak about the program.
Again, my thanks to Deschutes County Forester Kevin Moriarty for joining us and explaining the Sweat Equity Bin Rental Program. If you'd like to find out more information about the campaign, you can go to the Natural Resources Department at Deschutes.org. There you'll find the requirements, application, and other details about the program. Remember, you can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to click those follow buttons, drop us a review, drop us a rating. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us at Deschutes.org/podcast. But until next time, please be safe out there.